Hey there. So despite everything that's going on in the world right now, I'm very thankful about one fantastic thing that's happening in Vancouver right now, and that is that spring is here. Spring is here. Time marches on. It just keeps going. The seasons keep coming and spring is here. Spring in Vancouver is actually really, really lovely. The air is fresh. Everything feels super clean outside. It feels wonderful. Is there sunshine and fresh air? It's a really nice time. So spring in Vancouver brings to mind a few things that I want to talk about today. The first is spring cleaning. The second is cherry blossoms and sock blanks we're going to talk about today. And the last thing is new sweaters. Hey there, thank you guys so much for being here. My name is Felicia from SweetGeorgia, and this is Taking Back Friday. This is a space where we come every Friday and we talk about knitting and spinning and weaving and dyeing and all the things about the fiber arts. Now, this is my attic that we're in right now, and it has been somewhat refreshed in the past couple of days. There's still a little bit of a mess over there on the other side of the camera that you can't see. But in the past week or so, it's been sort of the last week of spring break, or what's supposed to be spring break for us and the kids here. And so we have been trying to settle into new schedules and new routines. Part of that is me recording this vlog at 9:30 at night after everybody has gone to sleep. That's the only time that it's basically quiet, because normally in the daytime now it's a little bit loud, and so my kids are 4 and 6. They really enjoy being right next to me all the time, and that's awesome and wonderful, and it is a blessing to have more time to spend with them right now. Are you squishing my yarn?
Yeah. Can I take some of your yarn, please?
S-E.
Is this?
Yeah.
Plus, I got some yarn into a yarn clubhouse. This yarn clubhouse is gonna be the best. Yeah.
It's made me realize how important it is to carve out space for my kids and my family in all of the things that we're doing. So like, I know some friends of mine are adding like mini little offices for their kids inside their home offices, so that the kids can, do their coloring or do their work or whatever in the same office room with their parents while everybody's working from home. And same, like I work from home, we have a home office, but I also have this studio attic where we're doing all the filming and we're teaching a lot of things. And well, the kids were building a fort back here behind my set. And so that was becoming a bit of a challenge. And so what I needed to do was I cleared out a whole other section of this attic space in order for them to set up an actual, play area for themselves. And so that they could be in the same room with me at the same time while I was preparing for filming and teaching and all things like that. And they have a space for themselves. What's that, Preston?
This was our base.
Yeah.
And then that was base 1.0.
Yeah.
And then we're at base 2.0.
Yeah, you moved your base, right?
Yeah, we moved it along.
Tell me about your space. What's in here?
Our space is awesome. It has toys. Yeah. And computers. We have lots of weapons. And also computers.
So now they have their own little lounge base where they're doing their reading and they're playing and all this kind of stuff in the same space as we're all in.
Toilet paper! We don't need toilet paper. We might need it. Well, we need toilet paper if someone has snot. Okay, Mama?
Okay, that's a good idea. It's still a little bit chaotic in the daytime, but we're trying to juggle everybody's needs and space requirements and all sorts of things like that. And so that has made me rethink a little bit about tidying up the attic, doing a little bit of a spring cleaning, going through and processing all of the fiber that's hanging out, the yarn that's hanging out, the things that are destined for other projects that I'm supposed to return back to the studio, like all sorts of things like that have been going on. Now, one of the things that was repurposed was this table back here. This came from that corner that I vacated for the kids to make their play area. And so this I have repurposed to put in this corner so that I can make myself a little weaving bobbin winding station. So here, you can see that that is my double-ended electric bobbin winder. I love this thing, and it's always kind of like floating you know, around the studio wherever I happen to be able to stand and find like a clear horizontal surface to put this on so I can wind some bobbins. But now I have just put it here and put my entire basket of weaving accessories right here. So I've got all of my shuttles in here. I put a ball winder in here, all my bobbins, everything is all been collected, rounded up, and put into this one little basket that I can tuck right there on the table. And then this is kind of like a permanent solution for winding bobbins. So bobbin winding station. Very, very excited about my bobbin winding station. So that's one of the things that I've tidied up in here. And then just like cleaning up, and I've sort of reset where the table's gonna be, reset a bunch of things in here. Yeah, I'm hoping that this is gonna work out for some time because it's a little bit unknown, you know, how long we're gonna be in this holding pattern. Yeah. So I know that there's some viewers who have just stumbled upon this vlog. I did do a couple of tours of the attic in previous episodes of this vlog. So there's like an attic tour, and then there's another episode where me and Nina are tidying up the attic and going through all the yarn and all the yarn stash and all that kind of stuff. And so there's a couple of sort of organizational sort of vlogs on this channel. If you guys are interested in looking those up, those are around. Now, the second big thing that is happening at the studio is, well, cherry blossoms have come out again. So Vancouver, every year, you know, around April, May, end of March, April, May, that is when cherry blossom season starts in Vancouver. Cherry blossoms are like a huge thing in Japan, right? They call it hanami, where they have like cherry blossom viewing parties, and everybody gathers together in big groups, and they'll like have picnics outside underneath cherry blossom trees to just look at how beautiful they are and just enjoy being outside and enjoy that fresh air in springtime and all that kind of stuff. And so cherry blossoms in Vancouver are also a very, very wonderful, beautiful thing. And so a couple of years ago, for my book that I wrote, the Dying to Spin and Knit, I made a colorway in there that's called Cherry Blossom, and we dyed it as a hand-painted colorway, and I hand-painted it on some cash silk lace, and that became a scarf that we did like a planned pooling project out of. So that was in the book, and I really, really, really liked that colorway a lot. We also decided to do it this time as a sock blank. And now let's talk about sock blanks. Okay, so this is the colorway as a sock blank. This is the sock blank that has been wound up into a ball. So let's talk about sock blanks and what these are. So I'm going to show you another sock blank here. This is just one that's already open. This is what a sock blank is. It's basically a piece of fabric that has already been knitted into a cloth, and then using that knitted cloth, it comes to us undyed, and then we put dye on it. So we can paint it, you can stamp it, you can dip dye it, you can solid immersion dye it, you can do whatever you want. But basically this becomes a canvas for putting color on. So this is one that we've made that's going to be available in the shop. And then I'm going to unwrap this one for you as well. This one is the cherry blossom one. And so that's what the cherry blossom one looks like as a sock blank. Now, when you take this sock blank and you want to use it, what you do is you look for the sort of the thread that's hanging at the end, either one end or the other end of the sock blank, and then you just start to pull on it and it will unravel. And you can unravel this knitted fabric and then use that yarn to knit into some other kind of project. So you can do one of two things. You can just sort of rip apart, sort of unravel a little bit, like a few inches or a few yards at a time, and then knit that all up into another project, and then unravel a little bit more, and then knit it up into another project, unravel a little bit more, knit it into another project. So you can just unravel as you go, Or if you like, you can also wind it straight on into a ball. And so you can use it just like you would with any other yarn. You would just knit from the center or knit from the outside of this ball, of the center pull ball. And what you'll get is you'll get a gradient yarn. So if you're knitting with this, if you were starting from the outside, you would get burgundy for most of your project, and then it would go to the pink, and then it would go to the lighter pink, and then it would go to the olive, that sort of thing. So you would experience the gradation that way. So you can actually see in front of me here, I have my warping board up here. I'm making actually a warp using a hand dyed sock blank. So let me just show you. I'm just in the middle of it right now, but basically I'm winding a warp on this warping board using a sock blank that I have unraveled and made into a center pull ball. Now I have done one step before making it into the center pull ball, and basically I have washed it. So what I did was I basically took the sock blank, I unraveled it by winding it around a swift, a yarn swift, and so that made for a skein. And so you can see this is one that has been, you know, wound into a skein, but it hasn't been washed yet. So you can see how springy and bouncy it is. Like if you look up real close at it, it looks super elastic, like ramen noodles, right? So it's very, very bouncy. It's very, very crinkly. And so what I wanted to do before I wind this warp that's going to go into a loom, I wanted to wash this skein. So I just put it in some warm water, let it swish around, wring it out, and then hang it up to dry. And so after I've hung it up to dry, it turns out a lot smoother. So you can kind of see the difference between these two. So let's show you this way. So this one is a sock blank that has been wound into a ball without washing. This one is a sock blank that has been wound to a ball after washing. So you can see the yarn on this is much more relaxed. It's not nearly as crinkly as this one. But you can use it either way, crinkly or not crinkly. When you're knitting with it, it's going to be fine. When you block out your project at the end of the day, all of that crinkliness will also dissipate and go away. You won't really notice that. It's not going to be a really big deal. But for me, with winding the warp with the sock blank, I didn't want any of the crinkliness involved in the measuring of this warp, because you know that extra little springiness could add for a little bit more inconsistency in winding the warp. I wanted to make sure this was very consistent, so that's part of the reason why I washed the sock blank before winding it into the warp. So now that these have been also wound into skeins, I'm going to wash these ones as well and let the yarn relax a little bit so that I can also wind them into a ball. So there's two there that need to be washed. This is another ball that has been washed and then put into a ball format. So that is much more smooth. So these are all sock blanks that have been hand dyed, hand painted prior to working with them. So you know, I'm going to talk about making this weaving project with the sock blank because that is for the next episode of the hand woven color course that I'm putting together. Now, if you're interested in just the knitting side of it and seeing like what does a sock blank look like after you've knitted it, these are some of the projects that we have had in the past. So let me show you this one. This is a lovely one. So this is a shawl pattern that is called Atu, and it's designed by Tabitha, our design director. Originally it was designed to use a party of 5 mini skein set, but in this case we're just using the same instructions but just knitting it straight with the sock blank and not changing colors or anything. This sock blank colorway happens to be called the Invisible Fate colorway. This one was an exclusive one from a while back, and then we also have this one which is called Eskra. So you can see like this very smooth sort of gradation between one color to the next color. These shawls, both this one and the previous one, happen to be ones where you start at the corner and then you knit an asymmetrical shape and it just kind of gradually expands and expands and expands. This colorway was called Eden and the pattern was called Eskra. Now we also have, because I know that many people watching here also crochet, and you're always wondering, how come you guys don't have crochet patterns? We do have crochet patterns. This is a crochet design that was crocheted by Charlotte at the studio. And let's see here. It's designed by Mary Beth Temple. It's called Solna. And the sock blank is called Snow Queen. And you can see, I don't know if you guys can notice, but the color changing, the color shifting in the crochet version of these shawls is a little bit more chunky, a little bit more jagged. And that's because when you're crocheting, all of the color is being sort of bunched up into like a little crochet stitch, and then bunched up again and bunched up again and bunched up again. Whereas like when you look at some of the other shawls that are knitted, it's taking the color changes and it's distributing it is distributing the color along the width of your knitting. And so all of that knitting is all the color is kind of getting stretched out and applied like lengthwise, line over line over line over a long period, like a longer distance. And so it kind of smooths out the color transitions a little bit more. With the crochet, it's like all of the color transitions are being bunched up in one crochet stitch, and then you go to the next one, which bunches up a whole bunch of yardage. And so those color changes kind of like look like they're being bound together. And so that's why the color shifts happen a little bit in a more chunky way. And one last sample I want to show you. This one here. This one is called Lisbon's. This is actually a pattern that came out in a Mini May collection by Tabitha, and it was the one where we filmed at the juice truck. It was a fun one. But this shawl is basically two things actually. So it's a solid color down here. So you can see that this is orchid down here, just a solid hand-dyed color. And then it is mixed, alternating rows, or alternating garter rows with a sock blank. So one of the sock blanks that we did as a secret stash from a while back. So you can see that there's this one, this part is the sock blank. And so this is forming the gradation, and then it mixes together with the pinks and forms this sort of cool blend. So that is also very cool. So there's lots and lots of different things that you can do with a sock blank. You can knit with them, you can weave with them, you can do all sorts of things with them. Now we do have a tutorial that's going to be coming out later on. Well, no, actually it'll be coming out this week. And so Tabitha has filmed a more formal tiny tutorial about how to work with a sock blank, how you unravel it, how you work with it, what you can do with it, and all of that kind of stuff. So you'll find that on our channel this week as well, if you are at all curious about how sock blanks work and what you can do with them. Now, right now, this cherry blossom sock blank is available. We do them as sort of exclusive, so they're only available for a limited time, these colorways and these sock blanks, because it's kind of cherry blossom season. So it's going to come and it's going to go. It's going to go very quickly. So cherry blossom is available right now, and we also are going to be giving away our pattern called Cherry Bellini, and so that is for a gradient scarf pattern. The scarf pattern will be available when you get the sock blank as well. And the last thing I want to show you is this cutest little thing, if I can ever open this bag. So Leah, who helps edit many of the videos at our school, she also does tiny little resin things that are super fun. So she made these beautiful little teacup stitch markers, and these teacup stitch markers are really cute. They have sparkles and pink sparkles in like this teacup with a tiny little sakura cherry blossom flower in the middle of the teacup. They are super adorable, and so those are available right now as well. She said there weren't enough for me to have one. I have to give this one back. But they are beautiful. I have a couple of other teacup ones that Leah has made previously that I purchased that were beautiful. They have like little china teacup, and there's like a slice of lemon inside some glittery tea. I love them. Like anytime I get a chance to use a stitch marker, that's the stitch marker that I want to use. It's in my bag all the time. I love them. And so this is another version of it, but it's the sakura, it's the cherry blossom teacup stitch marker. So lovely. Thank you, Leah. So that is about sock blanks. Now, the last thing I want to talk to you guys about is sweaters. I'm going to show you the progress on the sweater that I've been making so far. So this is the sweater finished up to this part. Okay, so basically this sweater is Andrea Mowry's design. Is called the throwback cardigan. Very recently, she just came out with a new version of this pattern, which is called the throw over. It's a pullover version of this sweater. So you can get that same yoke design, but you don't have to knit it flat back and forth like I did. I love this yoke. I love this design. I love the combination of the colors that are in here. It happens to be trinket, watershed, seagrass, and afternoon nap. I love this combination. We were very, very inspired by Andrea's sort of pattern here, the throw over and the throwback. And so we put together a couple of color combinations as well. And those are also up on the website right now. So we put together some sort of kits for this as well and just, design different color combinations. But I love this. Yeah, I'm loving this sweater. Now, I think Tabitha left a comment on last week's vlog about whether or not I had checked my gauge, and I hadn't actually checked my gauge. And you know what? When you get to the bottom where you have to start zooming down and doing the stockinette part of the sweater, in the design, it does say that you need to make sure that if you're making any yarn substitutions that you should know your gauge and how it all works, because she's asking you to knit for X number of inches. And with the yarn that she specifies in the pattern, it actually grows. So you knit maybe like 8 inches and then it will actually grow after blocking to 9 inches. That's quite a lot. Now the yarn that I'm using here is the superwash worsted, so SweetGeorgia superwash worsted. It does not grow in that way. It's a much more bouncy sort of yarn. And so I'm familiar with it, but I wanted to just make sure that the gauge was going to be okay. And so what I did was I knit my yoke, and then I took my needles, because I'm using those bamboo chiago needles. I didn't want to get these wet or anything. I didn't want these metal parts to get wet or anything either. So I basically held my knitting needles together, held them up, and then I filled a basin with some warm water, and then I dunked my sweater. I dunked my sweater into the basin to get the majority of the sweater wet and to let it swish around for a little bit, and then I wrung it out. I wrapped it in a towel, wring out all of the excess moisture and everything, and then I laid it out to dry. And so I laid it out to dry. I let it dry probably about overnight, and then I went and I took my little gauge measuring tool that we have. It's a one from Acreworks. We got them specially especially labeled with SweetGeorgia for our retreat, and it was a giveaway for all of our retreat. But you can get one of these stitch gauge or knitting gauge tools from Acreworks. They're great. And so I just popped that on there and I measured what my gauge was. So my gauge for this yarn is 18 stitches across and 22 rows for 4 inches. Now in my case, with my gauge, in order to get the same length, which is ultimately at the end of the day, the goal is 9 inches. To get 9 inches of cloth, I basically need to knit 9 times 22, which works out to be 198. So I'm going to knit 198 rows of stockinette in order to get 9 inches. So this is where gauge is really, really important, because if I was knitting just, to her instructions, my pattern would either be, my sweater would like be too long, be too short, have all sorts of issues if you don't know what your yarn is after it's been blocked. So that's why it's so important to wash your swatch to find out what your finished gauge is going to be. Now, I'm doing this in a very casual, very rough, sort of measuring gauge in hindsight, which is never something I recommend. The person who has taught me and talked to me a lot about gauge is Tabitha. And so this past week, what we did was Tabitha put together all of the things that she wants to tell you about knitting gauge into a workshop. She wants to tell you about unblocked gauge, blocked gauge, finished gauge, how to get gauge, all of these things, how important it is to measure your gauge after it's been blocked, all of the things that we're talking about here. Now, in very practical terms, I just need to make sure that my gauge is right, that I have numbers so that I can calculate how much I actually have to knit in order to get this to fit. That's what we want. We want our knitting to fit, right? And so I'm doing it in a very rough way. I would advise you to watch Tabitha and have her teach you the right way to do it. And so that course, that workshop that she's put together about gauge is on the School of Sweet Georgia. And so you can find that as well. And so the last thing that I want to mention talking about the school is that very, very recently we decided to sort of reduce the prices of all the subscription plans. So the monthly plan and the annual plan have both been reduced. And we also added a quarterly plan, so like a 3-month plan. So all of that is in there on the school. We originally wanted to sort of reduce the subscription plan prices just temporarily for now in this time when people are needing sort of like some inspiration, keep creative, stay making things. We really, really want to encourage you guys to stay making things and also to stay connected. So that's part of the reason why we sort of brought down the prices of the school subscription plan. So those pricing reductions are going to stay in place until at least April 21st at this point in time. We're kind of like taking it as it comes and seeing, you know, how things are changing in the world and all these kinds of things. But I think that at least for the next couple of weeks, we're probably all going to be home making things. And so we want to encourage you guys to spend that time with us and make things together with us as well. So I hope that you guys will find us there, schoolofsweetgeorgia.com, and you can find us and the community there as well. If you haven't yet checked it out, you can also participate in the Sweet Georgia Make-Along that's happening in the school right now. And you can see all the things that people are knitting, and just it's a wonderful place to be inspired right now and just see a lot of positivity, a lot of really good, creative, positive energy that's happening right there. Yeah, I'm very grateful for the energy and the positivity that's coming out of that community right now in the School of Sweet Georgia. I'm very encouraged and feeling good and grateful about like the local community that we have here. It's just a very supportive group of people, you know, parents and other friends, and just I'm feeling very positive about a lot of things right now in a time that is also very, very challenging for sure. Very challenging for many of us. And so if you're out there and you're in need of people to talk to and chat with, we are continuing to do our virtual meetups for the Sweet Georgia Make-Along. So feel free to sort of connect with us, and then you can join the Zoom calls that we have on a weekly basis right now. It's just a really nice place to see everybody and to get together and to make things together. So thank you guys so much for being here for this episode. I hope you guys like what we're talking about here. If you guys like this episode, please do hit the like button. And if you would like to see more, please do hit subscribe. We come here every Friday. We try to come here every Friday. We talk about knitting and spinning and weaving and dyeing, lots of things about the fiber arts. Thank you for being here. Please take care of yourself. Please take care of your families. Please stay healthy, stay well, and I will see you in the next one. All right, bye for now.